Welcome to the Weekly Hijack.
Hello, everyone.
This is Once Upon a Time edition. This episode was...
The Siege Perilous, I believe.
The Siege Perilous. Interesting title. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I'm a little torn. So I want to hear from some other people's opinions here first.
Honestly, I'm really intrigued. I'm really ready to see, let's see where this is going.
I'm really interested in Dark Emma playing Hook like that it was very Rumpelstiltskin-like in retrospect.
Just to get the cutlass.
Yeah, to look for something that he would have touched
so
before.
They could do the healing spell that Belle already half made.
Yeah, I mean, that was really intriguing. And I really liked the Hook and Emma conversation there. Mm-hmm. I mean, he cut through her temptations pretty well.
Yeah, which was nice to see too.
Yes, which was really cool to see, you know, cutting to the truth of what was really going on as best as he could. But speaking of truth of things, I'm a little disappointed that they started taking Arthur in this dark direction. And that's partly because I was enjoying the charming story, because we haven't had a good charming story in, it feels like, a long time. And it was fun to see this little adventure thing between the two of them, and then for him to kind of backstab him, I was like, oh, that kind of hurt.
I'm with you. Well, here's where I disagree. I like the charming Arthur thing, the bromance.
Yeah.
I thought that was fine. I actually kind of enjoyed it.
It was very bromance.
To me was, I liked the episode until, this, I'm Prince Charming, and I've always worried about being remembered as only this guy who kissed this girl all these years ago. I'm like, what?
Well, I
Who
thought...
is this character you're talking about? That to me was incredibly lame.
Well,
from him starting the romance to becoming this night thing was 10 minutes. I don't know. If they wanted to do this, I don't mind the night thing. I could have gotten into that and whatnot, but his insecurity about not being knightly enough and being princely enough is not in his character in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I don't know about that.
I kind of liked it just because it was almost playing on the sense that the audience has that he doesn't do anything anymore.
But it was too fast.
No, okay, that may be.
Just right away it was and I've had this deep-seated thing about only being the husband of this girl for all these years. What? No, you've been a really busy guy who's done a lot of stuff that's not. It just seemed to come out of nowhere for me. But I agree also that I didn't like the Arthur thing turning bad. It's one of those things we see all the time. There's this new character, they're friendly, you get this new thing, and then, boom, we hoodwinked you, it's the other way around. And it's I don't
know, personally...
Can't we just have another good guy?
Yeah. Is there anything wrong with having an actual good person,
yeah.
You know?
And on top of that, the line about we can't get home, we're going to turn this into our own Camelot is very much to me like the Star Wars, it can only mean one thing.
Invasion.
Really, you've been there for 2 days, or a day and a half, a couple of days. Yep, there's no way to get back to Camelot. We're going to take this place over. This is just the way we're going.
Now, here, I agree with the new Camelot thing. That's just weird. And I like the night thing with David, except given the Siege Perilous, I'm seriously, you've known him for 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Yes, the seat thing was wait, no, you're not gonna. What? Really?
Seriously?
Now, and if Arthur is trying to manipulate them the whole time, then it sort of makes it over.
And that would make more sense to me if they played it as charming, felt bad, and he needed a quest and stuff, and so Arthur, was okay, I'll buddy up and do this thing. But Arthur is then taking advantage of a situation he didn't set up. And he uses it to an end that he already had set up. Which is where I have a problem with those kind of things. Because he didn't plan it. He's capitalizing on something he didn't plan. Had he started it, instead of... You could have skipped the whole charming thing about him being self-conscious about this thing. You could have started this whole romance in this thing, and hey, look, we're a lot the same, and this not. and enjoyed that, and then, said, no, you should have this throne, you should do this thing, and Charming would have been like, no, I really appreciate it, I don't know. And played it off more as like an honor that he wasn't necessarily like searching for. To me, would have felt more realistic to Charming's character, and you could have got a little tiny hints about Arthur not being completely honest, so it wasn't just one of those honest, boom, evil, and you're like.
Well, here I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree on the. I personally am kind of intrigued by the bad Arthur, and here's why. Because to me, like I get the whole like it's good bad. To me, he's not a bad Arthur. He's a uber nationalistic Arthur, and to me that's interesting because I don't think he's. I think he's playing this gray area where he's good, but he will protect his country above all things. And to me, that could be an interesting thing.
I can see how that could be an interesting thing. I would have preferred they built that into the character in little parts earlier, seeing more of his nationalism,
Well, I mean, they did a little bit in this, talking about how competitive he is and all this. I mean...
Yeah, but not in the same way, because to me it felt just like, boom, he's evil.
You see, I didn't get that sense.
I'm okay if he's more nationalistic. That is an unexplored thing that I could be okay with. But it, to me, felt like one of those same old, like, okay.
Like, if you're going to go to the extremes of having one of your underlings, like...
kill himself,
yeah. Then, like, you've really crossed a major line there. That's like...
But here's... no, I agree. But the thing is, apparently Camelot's like that because the servant was willing to do it. I mean, Camelot is this thing that they're like, the servant's like... for Camelot, and he's like, okay. He bought into it. He didn't have to get conned into it. And they talked about this whole, they were very vague about the Lancelot thing. And I really felt like there was a different story than what David was implying in there. And then when Lancelot comes back, and I'm like, oh, maybe there will be a different...
It was kind of funny that it was one of the few times they've actually referred to, yes, there are all these stories about you, and the stories, I've heard from the stories say that this happened.
Yeah. And Arthur was very vague. He never actually said anything in particular. Like, it was a difficult time, and part of it had to do with me. I mean, so there's a lot of, I think there are hints in this episode that things are a little, not evil, but just, Arthur is...
We had seen in a previous episode that he was sort of had his own agenda. We had seen that. I don't know. It just seemed to cross a major line this time. Like I could even see like, okay, stealing the mushroom. When we first saw that show that the Guinevere was like, well, okay. It just, I don't know.
I agree with you. If you wanted, I agree. It made him look more evil. They did some things that made him go from his own agenda to being like a bad guy.
Yeah.
And if they wanted, they made him a bad guy, which I think is the difference. If you wanted to make him not like a more neutral, he's got his own agenda,
right?
Versus he's on the dark side. That's where I think the killing, having him kill the servant, I think really kind of went too far.
It's sort of like, to use one of our favorite illustrations, Lando Mollari going from your civil disputes with Narn to sending a force to slaughter a bunch of Narn. It's like you've crossed the line there, and it's hard to really justify that from strictly a nationalistic standpoint.
And I won't argue with that. I guess I'm curious to see how they develop Arthur. And I mean, he didn't actually make the guy take the thing. The guy did it of his own free will, if you want to do that.
Okay.
But no, I'm just saying that obviously there's this thing that it's not just Arthur. There's a whole cabal of people inside Camelot.
I am less optimistic about how well they're going to do that than you are. I think that's a neat idea. I think the nationalistic Camelot idea is a neat idea. Yeah. I don't have faith that they've done it in a smart and interesting way.
To switch topics real quick, all last season was all about the villains are going to be good and good is going to be villainous, and they're actually playing it well so far this season. I mean, in some ways, that Good Swan is evil, and that Gold might actually become
a good person. Yeah,
in a real way, not in this like I never changed any of my stuff. I'm just written differently, sort of thing. That was very unsatisfying.
Remarkable thing about Gold there, real quick. Again, a testament to the actor whose name I can't think of off the top of my head. But as soon as he woke up, it's like, that is Rumpelstiltskin. It like he immediately had the very kind of cowardly. He's like, oh, I'm not the Dark One, it's you. And like, he wasn't Mr. Gold, the high and mighty in charge anymore. He was Rumpelstiltskin, the poor crippled peasant. Again.
I am really interested in what they're going to do with him. The writers are in a tough spot because everyone knows he's absolutely best as the Dark One.
Mm.
But seriously, can you give him the Dark One again and he be part evil and part bad and have this thing with Belle? And I mean, there's everyone. I mean, sadly, people will be. Some viewers will be okay with that and stuff, but it's just like, please don't. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But you can't have him if he's not going to be. I mean, he's not going to be a good character if he's not in some way.
Yeah, they can't.
Well, that's why they have the talking guy, which helps.
But you can't have him forever.
To do a resolution for the season, or even I don't even know how they're going to play it. Emma's not going to be able to be the Dark One forever. That's not going to happen.
Well, and I think they said in that link that you sent us that the Dark Swan they were still doing like a little arc. And they consider Dark Swan an arc, just like they've done with the last couple of seasons, where they have like half.
Almost half.
So, which made me wonder that very thing. Is like, well, don't really want Rumpelstiltskin to become Dark One again.
They almost need to, the Dark One needs to be done. We need to be done with the Dark One. There isn't one. I don't know how you're going to play Gold then. You know what I mean? Because his character's so great as the Dark One, but they just need to be done with that story. It needs to close the book on it. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's another reason why it would be... I mean, dealing with the darkness would be a good finale for the show overall.
This season should have been the final season.
Because their flashbacks are still working for me, generally. And everyone feels like they're doing something very semi-important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had other than the problem I had with Charming.
It was interesting. How often do you get to see a conversation between Hook and Robin Hood?
I know that's all awesome.
That is, as much as I love Robert Carlyle, that's his name, Rumpelstiltskin, not having him in the picture largely for a while allows some of the other characters to do more things.
More dwarves.
Yeah. Nick is rooting for a dwarf revolution next season.
Next arc, yeah.
I love Hook. Yeah. I am surprised at how. I mean, and I was one of the times I watching it this time. Oh, when they were doing the scene with Emma and him on the boat. I'm like, this is Captain Hook. If your kid had only ever seen or heard the Captain Hook from Peter Pan, done that, and then you're like, oh yeah, and there's this Hook. He falls in love with this person and he saves all these people and he does this thing. They'd be like. No.
Some of their best characters are the ones that they really push beyond their initial.
Yeah, Hook has really very little similarity to the actual Captain Hook.
He does now.
And he's a great he has a hook. That's about it.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
To jump all the way back to the beginning discussion, I will say too that one thing that probably was leading Charming to feel kind of incompetent the whole time. I mean, he hasn't really been able to protect his daughter at all through the whole thing. He's constantly having to rely on her to save people. So I think there's a lot of history of he's done a lot of heroic things, but he's been kind of overwhelmed lately
by magic.
Yeah, and he's great against physical things, but certain magic things.
See, and that makes more sense if you go into the protection of Emma or something that way. But he feels like he'll only be remembered as this guy who kissed Snow White.
I think it's probably
no motivation for me. That to me just didn't seem like real motivation.
I think it's probably a case where they tried to include a lot of ideas in one story, and it was hard to give proper balance and reasoning for all of them. But okay, we better wrap this up.
Main flaw of the season that the wrap up of the giant monster is always either hold hands or let's give them a chair that no one has. It's almost too much. But other than that, a lot of the other things are working decently.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, all right.
All right, we're done. Stay tuned for another episode next week of Once Upon a Time, and make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes and
Stitcher and YouTube. Yep.
That goes for the Weekly Hijack and its sister or host, parent,
parent
podcast, Derailed Trains of Thought. Until next time, this is Tim.
This is Nick.
And Zach, as it was over there, you heard a lot of him.
Bye.
Bye.